opportunities. So we are providing many scholarships. So the many girls are not aware of this. So the opportunities must be informed, access to grievance redressal, and the main point is safety and security. And the points may be unending. So we should need a thorough evaluation or an introspection on these points so that we can be more empowered with our women education. And then as a conclusion, the new policy is visionary, and the goal of achieving equity and accessibility to all can be a strategic move towards the development of India to become the knowledge superpower. So every policy recommends the upliftment of society through education, and we are still far behind the set goals. So implementation is questioned in almost every recommendation and policies. So we should try to overcome the challenges required for the implementation, the funding, whatever is required, what are the supporting mechanism required for the implementation policy, that should be taken care of. So let me conclude. Thank you. Thank you for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you for giving us a brief introduction about the various committees, acts, policies, and legislative and bureaucratic interventions which were focused on women's education, and also telling us about the ground level difficulties in implementing them, and also for giving us a brief idea on and also the limitations of the new education policy. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are moving on to the next speaker, that is Dr. Sameer Babu. Dr. Sameer Babu is currently working as an assistant professor of education at the University of Kerala. He has 8 years of teaching experience in various institutions of higher education. He has secured his doctorate degree from Jamia Millia Islamia, New Delhi. He is working on areas like social intelligence, goal orientation, self-handicapping, bullying, victimization, relational aggression, etc. His teaching experience in various universities include the University of Delhi, the University of Kerala, Aligarh Muslim University, and the Central University of Rajasthan. Welcome, sir, and over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Vandana, for your kind words. And I was told to give a summary of the discussions that we had just now. Then I add upon some of the points, and briefly let me go through the comments that has been given by the earlier speakers, Dr. Sabistan and Dr. Cynthia. Dr. Sabistan had rightly pointed out some of the difficulties that we are having and the situation where women and the situation globally. She has given an outline, and in India what is the situation, especially the enrollment, the literacy rate, and all she has given nicely. And when we talk about the issues, it has to be, my point is that irrespective of some of the policy kind of things into that, my point is that we have to begin from the issues in the for example, it's a ground level. From the ground level itself we have to begin strengthening the women in a better fashion. Then only we have to ensure that they have an appropriate place in the society. As I perceived from the discussion, that attitude matters a lot, because irrespective of lots of improvement, lots of policies, programs and suggestion measures that we have, still the condition is not up to the level. The situation earlier in the last year, that is 2019, I think it's the end of 2019, I got an opportunity to attend a consultative meeting of Samagra Shiksha with UNESCO chair in Kerala. Then when some of the it is not out, some of the report, they are in the process of consolidation. I was quite surprised the situation that we are having in some of the states, especially Kerala is having some of the best performance in indexes of education. And even in the state of Kerala, it is not promising the situation that we are giving the opportunities in the sense the infrastructure, the facilities and attitude, it is not that much promising. So what I perceive that rather policies, we need some the stringent measures action from the grassroots level. So women manifesto kind of organizations have lots of role to do. And what I perceive that even the facilities like toilets, that is functional toilet, are not up to the level, not promising. How the girls can enroll or girls can continue in this kind of schools? Even some of the consideration they were talking about was one of the functional toilets, availability of water, water in the sense water in toilet, and even door of the toilet. This was not up to the level. I mean, even it is not 100% in a stage that is having promising figure. So how can we expect some of the states those are having less improvement statistically in terms of the things? So my point is that whenever a policy comes, there should be stringent measures to strengthen it, adopt it and implement it. Then only it will be all right. So everything is similarly the main issue of education, enrollment, access and retention. I mean, not access, it's enrollment and retention is of we have a stereotypical attitude. Rather giving equality and equity to the category, the so-called group, we are still treated as unequals, because I don't want to expand it much more about it. Then comes to Cynthia. Dr. Cynthia has wonderfully explained the whereabouts of the systemic reforms and requirements in terms of the empowerment of women and girl child especially. So we know that the inequality everywhere, worldwide inequality, the issue whenever we are talking about enrollment, whenever we are talking about access, retention or even literacy, all the time everywhere globally we see that women are not up to the level or not competent with the counterparts in their statistics. So there are, it is a thing, it is a generally it is a common phenomena. But why this happen and what type of measures we can take into incorporate this? I hope that the policy with its suggestions, with its inclusion, later when it comes to the act and rules, gradually it will take into account, and all of us can contribute meaningfully to the development of this kind of thing. Then urban rural divide she has talked about. Urban rural divide is exclusively it's visible. Why this happen? And we know that in the policy the women have been included, the community has been, the folk has been included as the socio-economically disadvantaged groups. Still from the beginning from the beginning of our formation of our policies, or even after post independence, there are lots of things still we are speaking underprivileged and disadvantage. Why this happens after long years of independence? Still we have this kind of measures. We don't have such stringent measures to come up with to cope up the situation well. Why this is a question all the time we have. And there is a specific place of the attitude. I think it has to begin from the family. It has begin with the family, with an individual. So that way it has to don't blame the governmental machinery. Rather we have to take it as a collective action. We have to take it as a all the persons, even all of us, you, all of us are the part of ensuring the equality, ensuring the specific atmosphere for the girl child to enroll and progress towards the better education. Now, when we talk about the policies side and the access equity things, still we have, irrespective of all the measures we have women's commissions, national policy of women, we have 2016, and later we have commission for women. Then lots of improvement, lots of policies, as madam has explained, lots of policies we have to strengthen. Let me read out some of the policies and the program. From the initially we know that Antyodaya Anna Yojana, that is related to this. There are specific measures for women in Maharashtra especially. Then there are many policies like education assistance to a girl child. In Uttar Pradesh, there is electricity scheme especially for girl child. Then there are lots of employment scheme opportunities in various states. Then family counseling center schemes are there. Then flagship program for gender awareness in many states we have. Similarly, gender advisory boards we have to give proper guidelines and ensure that this is being happen properly. The sensitization one way or the orientation to strengthen the group is there. Then there are lots of grant in aid schemes and different acts against atrocities against women that we know, and I'm not going to much in the details. Then Kishori Shakti Yojana, another program that we have to strengthen the girl child. Then Mahila Police volunteering, Shakti Kendra, Mahila Shakti Kendras, Maitri scheme, Nari Shakti Puraskar, lots of options we have, Nirbhaya, lots of options we have. Still, we have very less, very less, I mean, it is not satisfactory, the improvement as a whole. Now, when come to the policy as a whole, national policy that we are talking about now, it is, I already told you that is they are in socially economically disadvantaged groups as considered. But at the same time, when we focus on some of the significant measures highlighted in the national policy that we are having, is one is, as Cynthia has mentioned, early childhood care and education. The earlier policies were not up to the level, I mean, were not focusing on the early education, that is preschool. One way we can get preschool education or from birth till 6 or 5 years of age. So even right to education has come in 2009-10. We had a criticism that there is no mentioning about the early childhood care and education. Now we have a mentioning of that, and the National Council of Education Research and Training is interested with, that is NCRT. They are interested with to come up with a specific policy regarding early childhood care and education in this year itself, that is 2020 to 2021. So hopefully they will come up with a stringent, a great policy framework to how to go ahead with the education of them, because in the foundational level we have 3 years of elementary and 3 years of the preschool education. In that category, 3+ year students are getting admitted, and of course this is in one way or the other, it will lead to some of the improvement in the conditions of women. That is, once the students are sent compulsorily, or it's a mandatory that students have to be sent to schools, then their condition or their possibility of inclusion in some of the programs will be better. I hope that this early childhood care and education, as the it will be, the policy will be, and it is having its own hope for us, that is there will be some improvements. Similarly, when this kind of policy comes, there are chances of more women to take this kind of opportunities as volunteers, as teachers, as the supporting staff. There are more opportunities for women, because of this stage mostly women prefer this kind of teaching jobs. So one way we can have that. Then in order to ensure the access and retention of girl child, the policy explains that the institutions or governments have to ensure that for the easy access, or the way to school, the transportation, or the, we can say that the way to school we have to ensure, that is the student, there is a comfortability of movement from home to school, that is there is a mentioning in the policy. Similarly, free boarding schemes and scholarship schemes, incorporation of many kind of schools like boarding school, Jawahar Navodaya schools, and introduction of many Kendriya Vidyalayas are also mentioned. Now, similarly, we have a gender inclusion fund, but there is no specificity in it for what it will be used. So gradually, when it becomes, the policy becomes some statutes, laws, and some of the rules and regulations, gradually by 2020, we have to make sure that we have to ensure that This has some of the, it is not merely the gender inclusion fund, some allocation of fund. We have to pinpoint for which purpose we are going to we are going to exercise this, or we are going to allocate this fund. So gender inclusion fund and its allocation have to be better studied, and the organization like Women Manifesto, we have to propose some of the possible viable measures to the government, then gradually it may be taken to the account of the government for implementation in a better fashion. Similarly, another promising thing to women community is the idea of part-time education, idea of massive open online courses and its incorporation in the, and its equivalency with the regular stream. Similarly, we have a DTH channel based. Even the teacher education, most of, as madam has mentioned in the first speaker mentioned that there are issues of related to the social taboos with family and marriage. We have to admit that these are some of the biological things, and we have to admit that amidst of all these difficulties, we have to have some of the possibilities and solutions. I have undertaken a project on a specific community of women in a coastal belt, and I also suggested that there should be some teaching learning centers. It was one of my suggestions, teaching learning centers where the women community can join even in the evening for supporting the classes with volunteers to support them in their learning process. If they are dropped out, they have not finished their graduation, they have not completed their matriculation, they can join and do it. It was my suggestion in a project. My point is that in the similar kind of thing, we have better things. There are DTH channels to be operated for giving. Now we have NIOS. NIOS is wonderfully explaining giving opportunities. What is required? What required is we have to popularize this kind of things. We have to orient the group this kind of things, then it will be all right. There are provisions of part-time studies. There are measures to strengthen the open and distance learning in this. Even the teacher education programs where women group is more attracted. So the teacher education program, there is a provision of part-time Bachelor of Education program, part-time programs for strengthening the teachers, those who can enroll as the teachers of early childhood care and education. Those who have 10+2, they will be supported either on regular basis or on private basis, part-time basis, and only the internship programs have to be in a regular mode, because they have, that has to be better supervised by the authorities. Rest of the thing they can have through online mode or a distant mode. So even these type of provisions, I hope that these type of measures, if we take it as such and implement it properly, this will to a great extent, it is promising to the women folk. And similarly, we have to ensure that there are more chances, more orientation programs to strengthen the mental health of the girl child. It is we have even the, after long years of independence, we have many cases of Nirbhaya, we have Asifa Banu, we have many cases in Walayar of Kerala, some Palatai, lots of issues of the atrocities against women, rapes, kidnapping, lots of things are there against women even in this thing, irrespective of the educational improvement, irrespective of the social upliftment, we have all these. And so this is a kind of attitude, this is a kind of lack of awareness. When see one way we can say that the societal pattern has to be changed. For that, only viable solution is that rigorous orientation has to be given. Law enforcement authorities, we have law and order, and it is taking some of the time, and we know that when the justice is delayed, it is somewhat, it is denied. So that should not be happen, that should not happen. There should not be a mechanism, like this. There should not be a possibility of occurrence. Everyone, every woman should be protected mutually in the community. So for that, rigorous, stringent measures we have to take to orient the society from the grassroots level, from the community level, family level, we have to take. Then the implementation, if the implementation is also all right, I hope that the policy has its own, even though some of the aspects are not better touched, but some here and there is a mentioning of the possibilities, but it is not clearly mentioned that this will improve the condition of women, this will strengthen the enrollment. That is not as such mentioned, but there are measures of strengthening the socio-economically disadvantaged groups in which women community is also included. Similarly, there is a mentioning of special economic zones where there is a requirement, so that when it comes to an act, comes to a rule to be implemented, we have to ensure that, we have to make sure that some of the pockets we have to identify where there is a rigorous need of incorporating or rigorous need of establishing some of the schools, some of the things. Similarly, when a DTH channel like possibility comes, we have to ensure the basic facilities, telling or explaining or writing something about the innovative idea of introduction of the courses and programs through DTH channel is all right. But whether electricity is properly given, whether for watching, whether the television is available or not, whether they have proper power supply, lots of concerns we have to address properly. And since there is even local governments have a role in education, they also have to strengthen, they have to be come up with rigorous measures, and then only it will be all right. So as a conclusion, I can tell you that the policy is having its own measures in it, even though something is not explicit as such. There are implicit, because once we reading between the lines of the policy, we can say that there are possibility of uplifting the community, uplifting the women folk as such. But when we read peripherally, we may say that okay, there are only mentioning two three mentions, through three areas we have mentioned about women and women education. So whenever a group or whenever the government officials ask you to give suggestion, give it on the right, give it in writing. If it is all right, let them take it. But we have to properly mediate whenever we get an opportunity. Now I think it's open for, we can give suggestion to the government for before implementing this policy. So whenever we have some stringent measures, we have some strong viewpoints to argue, then we can highlight it and we can send to the government officials, then they may take into, at least we can say that we have initiated something. So let me conclude it, and we can take some of the questions if, or I hope that we have one more speaker. Thank you.
Giving us a brief summary of what all the previous two speakers told, and also on the difficulties of implementing these policies, and what happens and why and what happens, and also on the issues of gender sensitivity and suggestions, criticisms on what the public could do to these things, and also about the need of rigorous orientation. So thank you so much, sir. So we'll be moving on to the next speaker, Dr. Reem Shamsuddin. Dr. Reem Shamsuddin is an assistant professor in the Department of English of Maharajas College, Ernakulam, and she worked in the Delhi University for 3 years. She completed her PhD from the English and the Foreign Languages University, Hyderabad. Her areas of research is the internal displacement in India. Welcome, and over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Thank you so much for inviting me for this program. So I would be talking about women in higher education in the context of new national education policy. The problems, the challenges faced by women in higher education persist as an undone cobweb, with lesser participation of women in the field, continuous alienation and avoidance of women, and inadequate representation of their problem. So my argument is that the new National Education Policy 2020 passed by Union Cabinet seems to be exclusionary in responding to this subject matter, as it proposes few programs for the betterment have any mentioning upon those who belong to the weaker sections of women, like socially marginalized, like SC, STs, Bahujans, and the disabled. And it also ought to be considered as a failure if the process has to be considered as a failure of the process with least participation of these marginalized group in the committee formed for the committee for the formulation of policy committee if like with the least participation, if the committee like, with the least participation of these people in the committee formed for the program for the policies of such immense significance. Can I request something? Can you please ask people not to send messages right now, because as I'm a really bad person, it interrupts when I'm talking.
Okay, ma'am.
So yeah, so you can people can respond once I stop talking, I guess. Yeah. So yeah. So when in the context of pondering upon what kind of interventions the new national education policy could have made in the field of gender, in the area of gender, it is also important to look at the strategies of the policy in defining the marginalized communities by categorically neglecting the concept of caste. It is a fact that the participation of women in higher education is comparatively low, especially of those who hail from the weaker sections. The gross enrollment GER, gross enrollment ratio of SC, scheduled caste, is 23%, and gross enrollment ratio of ST, scheduled tribe, is 17% in higher education, in compared to the national gross enrollment ratio of 26%. So, and Muslims constitute only 5% of the student population, even though their overall percentage is of about 14% of the total population. So the low enrollment ratio of, so being a teacher for the in the teaching field for the past few years, it has been also noted that the number of women join in SC and ST category is very low. Sometimes there's hardly any women join in the scheduled tribe quota. So a low enrollment ratio of women, especially those from the weaker section, is mainly due to their social locale. That is, women in the rural areas do not get much exposure to the universities and institutions, universities and colleges. And so inaccessibility of institutions, of education institutions, caste and gender, all these constitute to the poor representation of women in higher education. So during 2019 Lok Sabha election, a video shot by a national channel was much popular, was circulated, and this video was shot from an interior part of UP, in which a girl of 12-year-old, she's talking about how she decided to become a doctor. And further in her explanations, it is clear that she's much aware of her social capital. And she knows that it is not only for her, neither for her, nor for anyone from the community, from her village, is to become a doctor, because they are not getting that kind of an education. So that the accessibility of education is very low for them. So they can study only up to the level which is being provided by the village education, provided by the village school. Definitely, when she voiced the the discriminatory approach of higher education, especially with regarding the inaccessibility of education to all, the popular interest or the popular sensibility prefer to go with the sentimental tone of the video. So even with regarding the central universities, it is hard for those who belong to the weaker section to make it through the entrance, which is the criteria of the admission, because one has to have a higher level of language proficiency and comprehensive power comprehensive power. So one has to have language proficiency, higher level of language proficiency and comprehensive power to pass the exams. Even though a couple of students manage to pass the exam, it is like, you know, even if a couple of students, if they, even if they manage to pass the exam, like, you know, the exclusive nature of the elite campuses hamper these students' survival over there. Gradually, like, you know, consequently, these students tend to lose their interest, and they become introvert, and gradually they recede from these spaces. So several times, even I had heard, like, you know, both teachers and students brazenly making casual comments about like, you know, like, you know, casual comments by connecting the regional background and caste with the language proficiency and accent of their fellow beings, including teachers and students. And even like, you know, people from the marginal, people from the minority are also alienated in these radical spaces as being identified as regressive. Practicing religion is always looked at with suspicion, even though a lot of cultural activities in connection to certain religious festivals are held on campuses. When I joined in EFLU in 2006, I was the only one headscarf wearing woman on the campus. And it is not strange that I cannot remember a Kashmiri Muslim woman studying with me. In concern with disability, like it is true that girls with locomotive disability and those with cognitive related issues are hardly seen on campuses. So both the curriculum and the spaces and the campus spaces, both intellectual and physical, are rudely inconsiderate. So these spaces are, like, you know, these spaces are rudely inconsiderate with the lack of provisions, as well as with the like, you know, range of scope to include these differences. So both the curriculum as well as the spaces of campus are not including these kinds of differences. So even in 2020, when a mother asked me, I was actually helpless when a mother asked me about the support for her, about the wheelchair support campus for her daughter. And in my academic life, even these years of my academic life, both as a teacher as well as a student, I can remember only one girl with a cognitive disorder who came to the campus, and she was pathetically dealt with. Everybody was complaining that she is bad at studies. She was bad at studies, and she cannot pass the exams, and she is not going to pass the exam. But it appeared to be nobody's responsibility to cater her academic requirements, her academic needs. She could make syntactically right sentences. Her language was in place, and she could make syntactically right sentences. But like, you know, that provocation, that special support she was needed was seldom given. So in this context, like, you know, it is very, the new national education policies apathy or unsympathetic attitude towards disability is very clear, is very obvious, as it is not making, it is not taking any effort to make like, you know, to categorize various requirements as per the nature of disability. Like, you know, each disability is not particularly defined. Now, with regarding the gender, as the new education policy is considerably quite about the situation of women in higher education, the authorities always tend to deal with gender or they tend to limit gender issues within the scope of sensitizing. And of course, the like, you know, the new education policy, the national education policy it tries to equate the socially marginalized with those with low income, right? People with low income. So uh, it is clear that both these problems are different, and in doing so, like, you know, when all the like, you know, weaker sections are being pushed into one category called socially and economically disadvantaged groups, then the caste and caste related practices and discriminations are sidelined, and even the entire field has been sabotaged. So now when we come to the facilities that are available on campuses in higher education, like, you know, it is a grave issue the lack of facilities in higher education is a grave issue. Now, not many universities are providing hostel accommodations to all women who join in the in universities. For example, undergraduate colleges in Delhi University provide limited accommodation, hostel accommodation to students, and that too on the basis of their merit. So in that case, not all from the weaker sections like are ensured with hostel accommodation or hostel facilities. And moreover, in various colleges, the fee of hostel accommodation is very high. So this restrict people from other part of the country to come and take admission over here. Delhi being known for, so Delhi is known for caste and religious based discriminations. It would be difficult for those from the weaker sections to come over the city and search for accommodation over here. And I had a personal experience of, if I had this kind of an experience of being discriminated on the account of my religious identity, then the condition of the students is would be unthinkable. Like, on the basis of caste, religion, region, and gender, etc. And of course, the recent fee hike also has to be considered in various campuses like JNU and IIT Bombay. Because of these recent fee hike also, there can be a lot of dropouts, especially from the women folk from these campuses. It is it has become a fact. It has become an established fact that only those who are with economic support and high social capital can afford to be in these institutions. Many of the girl students, including girl students, many of the students are managing their studies in these institutions by part-time jobs. And sometimes these this may affect their academics to a certain extent, because this is could be a kind of overburden to them, especially for an undergrad student. Now, with regarding disability, again, the lack of the infrastructure, the required, a lack of the unequal distribution of infrastructure among the disabled students are also a problem. There has been a lot of hue and cries made to make campuses disabled friendly with lifts, ramps. Can you please mute? With excuse me, a lot of noise. I can hear a lot of noise. Oh my God.
Yes,
So,
Seibunisa, please unmute your voice.
I'm so sorry, it is so noisy. So, yeah, a lot of hue and cries are made to make campuses disabled friendly with ramps, lifts, and special toilets for women. And special toilets for women, and even with ample academic support. But this has not been taken care of even now. Now, there are a lot of online digitized libraries that have sprung up, like Sugama Pustakalay, and even in these libraries are underutilized because of the lack of awareness among the students, and also due to the lack of supply of devices. There are various organizations like Saksham, National Association for the Blind, Karishma Enterprises, to supply with devices to the visually impaired people. But those who live in rural areas, it is very difficult for them to access access these materials very easily. And of course, the assistive technology with a personal computer, internet service, and a scanner, it is they are very highly expensive, and it is not easy for a student on her own or his own to to afford to buy. A student cannot afford to buy these things because they are highly expensive. So national education national education policy, as national education policy does not have any space for reservation. Like, this is going to affect the weaker sections of the society, especially the women. It is not talking about a reservation, and which could be the curtailment of Article 16 also. Now, with regarding funding, like national education policy proposes to allocate funding on the basis of the merit, like, funding that was given to the students in terms of fellowship and scholarship. So NEP has proposed to give this funding in terms of the in in terms of funding. So next, when we come to the concept of online education. Yeah, online education. When the Prime Minister has made this announcement that online education is the core of NEP, then a lot of questions came up. Like the Prime Minister said that it is the core of NEP to provide better education. So a lot of challenges, a lot of questions came up challenging the concept called quality education. And yeah, so when we took a leap into online platform, actually this has left a lot of people, majority of the weaker sections, uncared and alienated. In Kerala, especially in Kerala, the online education began with the tragic suicide of an Adivasi girl who was perhaps much anxious about the new system to which she was not exposed to and had no no access, had no available resources to be a part of it. And of course, online education is very highly expensive, especially when it imposes all the burden of it upon the parents. If a family with two children, each of them should have access to these separate gadgets to have to pursue their studies. And government gradually can withdraw from the projects like allocation of resources and infrastructure as the students sit at home and study. And of course, new education policy has not talked anything about the digital divide that online education can create. And again, accessibility of resources, lack of computer literacy. So online education needs computer literacy. Lack of computer literacy, accessibility of resources, intermittent power supplies, poor internet services, all affect the knowledge acquisition of students throughout the country. Now, with regarding disabled, especially online education can isolate those people with cognitive kind of disability, because they cannot do anything without an external support. It is difficult for them to manage on their own without an external support, and family members won't be much trained to manage their kids' academic needs. So in total, I don't think so that online education in the current scenario, online education is a positive note. Maybe it's a positive step if this NEP is proposing it to make it permanent. Though, during the time of pandemic, maybe we'll have to shift into online education, but as a temporary arrangement. I don't think so that it can be a permanent arrangement in the current, considering the current scenario of the country. There is a huge disparity in training also in higher education because of the private institutions. A lot of private institutions have created a lot of inequalities and discriminations among the students, and it should be noted that many of the private institutions have come up in the in the rural villages. And proficiency, not many undergraduate colleges are giving importance to the language proficiency of the students, though though there are a lot of programs like student support programs, SSP, and ASAP, and a lot of remedial programs are there. It is still not dealt with. And of course, language proficiency, those who are with better language proficiency are considered as intellectually high, and they are considered they get more acclaimed, especially those with high articulative power and polished style of writing. So they are well acknowledged, and the lack of language proficiency among the students is considered as the low capacity of the students. So very few institutions are providing bridge course to fill this gap. And it is like also NEP is introducing by NEP is imposing a kind of language curriculum burden, a kind of a burden of language curriculum upon the, it is introducing a language curriculum burden upon the students by the introduction of classical language. Sanskrit is not the it is not the mother tongue of a majority of the students. So people like GN Devi has mentioned that a program with a homogenized course structure and syllabus can cause the dropping out of students if they cannot connect themselves with whatever they are studying. So the same can happen with the case of the introduction of Sanskrit. Now, NEP has not talked anything about the, it is not dealt with the dropout of girl children from universities. And of course, it should be noted that the number of students the number of students the number of girls who commit suicide in recent years in higher education is comparatively high. So all these matters. So NEP, if NEP is implemented, I feel that this is going to be that the education is going to be very luxury for for everyone except those belong to the upper class or upper middle class people. So thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. Now we are moving forward. That was a wonderful session, and ma'am talked about the problems of NEP and also the least participation of marginalized communities in this new policy, and also about the digital divide and the practical problems faced by people from the marginalized sections, and also how it is not catering to the weaker sections and they are left uncared and alienated. Thank you so much, ma'am. Since all of the 4 speakers have done their session, we'll be moving forward to a discussion. And for the discussion, we have 6 members. One is Fatima B, Dr. Fatima B, ma'am, who's an assistant professor and a member of Women's Manifesto from Odisha. Then Shubham ma'am, who's a research scholar in the Delhi School of Social Work, Delhi University. Then Rafa Sabak, who is from a low background, and advocate Sajida Khatun, who's a social activist and a Women's Manifesto member from West Bengal, and advocate Nasima R.K., assistant professor in the Faculty of Law, and Daya Aruna, who's a research scholar in Jamia Millia Islamia. Welcome all of you, and over to you.
Hello. Hello. Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Assalamu alaikum. I am Fatima from Odisha. Hello.
Yes.
The webinar is so good today. And my question is, we judge the various problem which is comes in the women's educations towards the part of this women education. Many hindrances are comes, and we know all the hindrances, what are the difficulties in comes in the women's educations. But my question is how to eradicate these all problems, and we give the education to every women's, particularly in the field of women education. The women education is very low in minorities community. So how to eradicate all the problems and educate a girl child? Because in my case, in my locality area, is I am the first Muslim girls who receiving the doctor degrees and pursuing PhD at this university level. Many students are just go to the college just for the enjoyment, and college is nearby to her homes, so thereby just for the +2 and +3, only for the enjoyment of this college life. But she has no any aims to how to pursuing my educations and what are the set a goals, and we move on that field. they have no any set of goals in women. So these are the problems which is come in my localities also and many other parts of this India also. So we know every about the problems which is come in the women's education. So how we can eradicate this all the problems and educate the every women's towards the women's educations. And also the new NEP which is 2020. What's the provisions of that can is really helpful to this implementation and is really helpful to this women's educations.
To whom? Hello.
Hello.
To whom this is question to me?
Ma'am, we know the various hindrances which is comes in the women's education. So my question is how to eradicate all these
That's
problems and yeah, how to we can educate every girl sides.
see to eradicate the gender disparity. It has been put in the National Education Policy 22. How we can eradicate it? Education Policy
Ma'am, this
22.
education policy is really helpful for this women's
No,
education.
no, there are so many loopholes. I said the
Yeah.
policy is not every time the solution. It is like
Yeah.
we have the cultural change. And I have been worked in this area more than 10, 15 years, and I have submitted a report to the Government of India in 2012 and 2014, which is 581 pages, where I have given at that time 180 recommendations, right?
Yeah.
So there we need a lot many folds to to come out of this the challenge. So Dr. Sameer has already pointed out many things how we can be able to strengthen the girls' education. So see, we have discussed many problems. Education is now the right for a decade now, but Indian girls are only just beginning to claim their half of it. Right? How when this right to education has come? It has come so many years. So there has been, according to the census, the overall literacy rate in India was 73, but women literacy rate is 65. There exists a gender gap of around 16% between male and female literacy rate. The rural female literacy rate is 57, while the rural male literacy rate is 77. So how because of the lot of the disparity for women education, it needs our other person was talking about the gender inclusion fund and all. See, the education policy has now come. They have a lot of flagships for the inclusive education. After 2 years, 3 years, there will be again the evaluation how this has been affected, how this has been worked out, how this has been also work for the girls' education. Is there now the highest literacy rate among the females? That can be evaluated. I have already said the government come up with the flagship program Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao. So, but after 2 years, the CAG has evaluated that flagship program, and they had been failed what the sloganary was taken. So we can say that there may be many, because in in hindrance, I have already mentioned many 13 reasons, and for 13 reasons we need to work. We have seen the the countries where they have done lot of education programs for the women enrollment. China is the highest in the enrollment. Now our sister told us about the Japan, about the the Russia, about other Indonesia, about many countries. So they have been successful in the basic to higher inter education. So now the India, there is not only the one challenge. There is the challenge of infrastructure. There is the challenge of conducive environment. There is the challenge of the approach we have to change in the culture. So it needs to, we have to go along ahead. Let us take this as a positive note as an NCP, because many recommendations has come, and then it has been made this under the chairship of K. Korurajan. He was a scientist. So we need to see what will be. So everybody can contribute. If suppose this organization, Women Manifesto, they are doing many programs for the girls, for the empowerment, for the adult education, for the early education. So likewise, many people are working, civil societies, government will also do their own share. The corporates will also do their own share. Then we have to see before ahead. We cannot talk because the policy has come to transform in the sector of education. That has come, that has bring for this change only.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you.
Yes, anybody else?
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Myself Arifa. I'm from University of Kerala. I think I'm audible. Dr. Cynthia did talk about gender inclusion and gender disparity. Dr. V did talk about marginalized and oppressed. And Dr. Samir Babu about some advantages of this NEP. So, pardon me if I am wrong. I'm thinking when we are talking about this all, we are considering only two genders. But the thing, transgenders are more oppressed in everywhere, not only in education too. So, if I should talk only about women here, my query is how NEP is addressing the transgender or trans woman issue. Is it specifying something? The thing, our gender understanding have changed enough, and our university spaces are occupying not only cis women, right? It's occupying trans women, no, na? The beauty of trans women too. So I think already the education of trans women is threat. So how any is approaching this?
Yeah. Can I try and answer?
Yes, ma'am.
Can I try and answer? Yeah. So,
Yes,
in last year in Kerala, actually, the government has implemented some reservation for the transgenders, and we all were very happy about it. Okay, so finally, these people, the transgenders, are also going to be part of education. So even the students, some students who came to join, they were also happy. We still have some students in our college, some transgender students, but the unfortunate part of it is that many of the students had to drop out from the course because of these many issues, a they most of them would be out of their home, so they won't have, they are the academic space is not catering their accommodation, they are not getting hostel accommodations, and if even if they go out and take hostel accommodations, it would be very high, the fees would be very high for them, so they'll have to go and take some part-time jobs. So that those kinds of issues are still there, and even these kinds of alienations, if not on campus, inside campus, we try to sensitize students as much as possible, and the students are generally sensitized about these issues, but outside the campus, some kind of alienations definitely would be there, so that also caused these students to drop out from the courses they are in. So yeah, like in a hostel, when I was talking, I couldn't talk about the hostel, when I was talking about the hostel accommodation, actually the post metric hostels are there to provide accommodation for SEC, SCST girls, for SEC students. But what happens is that these post metric hostels are generally located far away from the colleges where the students take admission in, and some of them are, at least some of them are pathetically maintained also. So this also hinders students from other part of the country to come and join, or other part of the state to come and join in the colleges and universities. So yeah, definitely transgender issue is a grave their problems are grave issues to be considered in concern.
And to add to this, let me give some of the, there is a mentioning in a minimum way, there is a mentioning. If you see the page number 27 of the policy, where there is a mentioning of gender inclusion fund, it is mentioned that the fund has to be allocated to ensure basic facilities and removing barriers of female as well as the transgender children. That is a mentioning, and further when we are to implement it in the policy, I hope that there will be more discussions, and anyway we have to address it rigorously. We have to address this. Thank you, Reem ma'am, for giving a great picture of the reservation and the marginalization and all. It was very nice, and it was indeed it was a real explanation of the situation. Thank you.
Hello.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Aruna
So,
ji,
yeah, may I go? Can I
yes,
continue?
sure.
Yeah. So, thank you for the session. I have a few queries. Starting from the first panelist who have talked about the different approach of government. I think we are talking about the inclusion and equality, girls' education in education from 1966, from Kothari Committee till now. But the whole idea behind it is to how to include them in the education. But there hasn't been any talk about the cultural change. As Cynthia ma'am has talked about that, it's not just about the policy, but about the culture change as well. So, so is it also a loophole that the whole policies just talk about the pedagogy and approach and not about the other areas which affect the education of girls, or which is a hindrance? And the second thing I would want to ask is, Kerala is doing great in terms of education, be it the overall literacy rate or the girls' education rate. So I'm sure there is some awareness and sensitivity towards education and culture, culture, and the culture is very uh, uh, aware. The culture is very forward in education. But I just want to understand what the government is doing, or what is their approach that the education quality and literacy rate and the whole state is doing so well in terms of education. Yeah, thank you.
Can I answer the question?
yes, ma'am, sure, ma'am.
Yes. So you have raised a good question that education policy is not only mentioning the pedagogical approach. For example, you mentioned about the cultural exchange or cultural participation. Here, the policy again mentioned every child from 6th standard onwards, they have a community participation experience. Field experiences are provided so that they can go into a culture, go into a field and understand the culture, understand the life situation, and the opportunities are open for all children for the vocational experience living with a group bagless periods. So all these are provided in the educational policy, and we cannot assume that it will be very useful for, I think, it will be useful. Policy right experience can be more. Again, the cultural participation in case of recreation facilities are also provided to the children so that their mental health programs, mental health can be improved, and in a safe and secure and happy environment, a child can learn better. So it is more inclusive of not only the pedagogy but the whole system of the education. That is my response or view on that.
I think you got the answer to your query, ma'am. So before we go on to any other speaker, Shubham sir was requested to ask a question a few minutes back. So we will be taking that question.
Thank you, Vannaji. Good afternoon to all the esteemed members, and thank you for sharing this valuable information. So my question is, some of the colleagues already raised that question about Kerala education model and transgender. So my question, I have two questions. The first one is uh, whether there was really a need for another education policy uh, in the present context, and or shouldn't the country attempt to develop action plans for each state, clearly outlining how they can improve the present status of education, specifically for women and girl children, both in rural and urban areas? Thank you.
Shall I answer?
Sir, no. Any speaker can answer this question. Thank you.
Yes, yes, ma'am, sir. Thank you for your question. So, what I perceive that we need rigorous policies. I mean, in every time, because we have a policy of 1986 and this related program of action 1992, and then for the last around 30 plus years we don't have a policy. The policy that has been written and documented, or it is drafted long years back, may not be suitable for the present scenario. There were lots of changes in the socio-cultural pattern, political modalities. We have lots of things, and even economic situation has been changed, and even the psychology and pedagogic practices that we have is also changed. So in this context, and there is a need of continuous reformation, like new policies. Program of action is all right, but now this policy, I think it's a relevant one in the one, because I'm talking about not the exact relevance or exact meaningfulness of the policy, whether it is right or wrong. That is not my point. My point is that after long 30 plus years, we require, especially a diverse country like India with lots of changes, we need a policy. That is a necessity. And of course, when it comes to program of action, it has to be properly drafted later. And why we are repeatedly telling, even the Kothari Commission explains many of these angles. Even the National Policy of Education 1968 and even 86 program of action, everywhere the same kind of mentioning we have now. Why? Because we are not up to the level in implementing. So gradually, considering the situations, we have to have policies based on the changing state of affairs. I think it's my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we go for the next question. We Daya Aruna, she's having a question. Over to you, ma'am.
Hello.
Yeah.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah, Aruna. Go on.
Very good afternoon to one and all. Thank you for organizing this series. I have a question to the first three speakers, and thank you, Reem. It was a wonderful discussion. I'm going to ask a question to the Dr. Ghaffar-ji. Madam, you have mentioned about the visions of policies. I want to know from all of you that we are talking about women education. Means which women education we are going to? I mean to say, women is not on. Of course, we say that women is marginalized. She was categorized as Shudra. Hello. Hello.
Tell me.
Hello. Hello.
Yeah. Hello.
Hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah. I'm hearing you.
Yeah, ma'am. My question is that you are talking about the policies, but these policies, does it apply to the rural people? Like when it comes to the education, we have to look after the caste, race, gender. What I'm adding to the real point, that when it comes to the girls' education, simply even in the family itself, they neglect. What is the necessary of a girl to study? She can work somewhere when she gets married. Work somewhere is nothing but if we have any paddy crops or something else like business or something. Hello?
See, that is the fact. That is fact. The obstacle for that women face are largely societal and cultural. Yeah.
Yes,
so they act against women when they enter to the kindergarten. So they prefer.
I'm coming to the exact point, madam. I'm coming to the exact point. Yes, I want to talk about kindergarten, madam. When it comes to the
Yeah.
kindergarten itself, the school teacher says that कि आप लोग दलित है तो इन लोगों से बैठना नहीं, आप लोग दूर हट के बैठिए. Sometimes they have to stand out of the classroom and they have to get their education, right?
Yeah.
So when the beginning of education itself they are getting exploitation, discrimination. So how they can go into the higher education? Despite of all these, despite of all these hurdles, a girl reaches to the university. Even there also she faced the same problem, like not getting into the hostel, not getting into the classroom. She was criticized by the upper caste, whatever it is. So, being a girl, myself, I always question myself that what I am giving, what exactly pay back to the society, what I am doing. I am unable to educate one girl child because of we have cultural rights, what we have lack of facilities, lack of knowledge regarding the scholarship, what we mentioned. This national education policy has come out, but it is going to favor for whom, ma'am? That's what I want to ask. When it comes to earlier, the minority fellowship, like Maulana Azad National Fellowship, earlier, whenever we used to enroll for MPhil or PhD, we used to get the fellowship. But now, those who are clearing NET, they can access these facilities to the fellowship. But for a particular region and particular universities are getting these kind of fellowships. People like us, where do we have to go? Without scholarship, we are unable to pursue our degree. Hello?
See, I have already, I don't know, I have mentioned in my, the talk where I have talked, there should be more cultural change, not the policy be the solution, right? So, educational institution with undoubtedly many well-intended educators are themselves complete in reinforcing the hurdles in order to dismantle these barriers. We need to dismantle these barriers. We likely need educators at all level, either it is from the primary level to higher education, all level of education to examine their own biases and stereotypes. Right. See, we need to examine these biases and stereotypes. So these are many cases are coming. There is a denial for women education. Let us, because this perspective is regarding about the national education policy and women education. There are many drawbacks. Dr. Sameer has also, and other our co-panelist professor who has given a beautiful, the presentation. Let us take it as a positive note. Like this policy has come, and that is already I have given answer to one of the who has raised this discussion regarding. Let us see, they will evaluate after 2 years, after 3 years, what other drawbacks has come. See, there was one scheme which was for the Kasturba Balika Vidyalaya. That was also one of the flagship program for senior secondary schools, wherein the girls were staying in the hostel. They were from the hostel, the government was taking care. The same thing which you are mentioning. They were not allowed to the same kitchen. In spite government has, taken them on the merit basis or whatever, they have taken, they have enrolled them for this inter education. But within that campus, within that hostel, they have been discriminated. They have not been able to enter to the kitchens. They were not able to sit with the same peers who are having the lunch and sitting this thing. So this need to be examine these things. These biases, all the government has to also take the action against those educators who are doing such things within the campus, who are discriminating, like marginalized, and as well as for the gender purposes. They are discriminating them. And now the many civil societies are coming, they are raising their voices, they are coming up to stand for their justice and all. So let us, because that's a different topic, like the scholarship and other things what you are talking about. There are other reasons why they have been denied, okay, or they have been defunct, whatever is there. There is other things are there which they have stopped, or why they have not giving the fellowship scholarship through some organization, and there are other reasons as well. It's not because of the cost and other, it may be the other reasons. That is a separate discussion. Anything else?
Let me add something, can I?
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. I think is that the cultural plurality we have in India, but we are in a different kind of scenario now. Everywhere it's polarization. Even the politicians are against the this kind of things. They're against the margin. I'm not talking about the general politicians. Even the politicians are giving statements. Even the ministers are giving statements that is not viable, not acceptable to this. I'm not talking about any specific party, any specific politics. Still, it is most common among the politicians and rulers that they are not considering the cultural plurality as such. Similarly, even the learned community, I have an experience of, even from the heads of the departments, even from the senior teachers, they comment that okay, the head is an SC community, he is a Muslim community, or he is an ST, so we can expect that only. He will not be efficient for the administration. Even the learned community give this kind of comments publicly, not private. They are publicly. If it is in mind, it's their own difficulty, it's their own weakness. But even publicly they speak like this. Okay, the head of the department is C, so we cannot expect much efficiency from her or from him. This kind of this is a required functionally. We need an inclusive growth that only possible with an orientation. Corrective measures should be taken from the orientation. We have to take the community, take the group, take women, take the marginalized, take the SC and ST together, hand in hand. We have to ensure that whenever I get an opportunity, I have to show the society that I am not against the reservation. Even we have an anti-reservation policy, anti-reservation group is also going on. So whenever cultural inclusion is possible, the possibility within the limited framework, limited capacity of the individual, we have to come up with the as a model, as the exemplary model, we can show that. That is the only possibility, I think. Thank you.
See, Dr. Samir, may I have the one point quick?
Yes.
You are talking, there is everybody, there is, the discrimination. Has been the policies, who is making these policies? The politician is not making these policies. Educated people are making the policies.
Yes,
and they are also sitting, and there is a caste barrier. Try to understand who is in the bureaucracy. It starts from there. The mindset is there. There is a mindset of discrimination, either for the religion or for the caste or for the race. There is a mindset of different people who are educated, but they are biased. That is the core problem.
Yes, of course.
Educated people are the biased.
Yes.
So there are many, the debates going on, like UPSC and all. You have heard about why the minorities and these televisions, news channels are coming with these such things. So how is the mindset towards the are the people, are those people the are they the uneducated? We need to crack down all those things. It need to, they need to have some counseling. They need to have some debates. They need to have some good counselings. Like if we are talking about sabka vikas, sabka saath, or each one teach one, whatever. We talk about very fancy things in the NCP. Let us see, the government has come up with the document, and the monitoring committee, everything they have put in the very beautiful, and lot of debates and discussions are going on, and many things are coming as a positive. Let us evaluate, let us wait for the 2 years. Let us see what will be the change. Is there a drastic change, or it is only a document? Because government has also to come forward under the public-private partnership. They are also, because now that is how the things will change. Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Hello. Yeah. Yeah. I think we will wrap up because now it's time for
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
Mars
ma'am.
and all. Today is fasting and all.
Yeah, yes, ma'am. Like we had one last question from Sabiha ma'am. Yeah, Sabiha ma'am. Can we take that last question and go for
Yes.
the conclusion part? One last
Yeah.
question, ma'am. Yeah. Okay. Over to you, Sabiha ma'am.
Hello. Is there any
Hello.
scope? Is there any scope for value-added or value-based education?
I think that is already some private schools are already they have integrated in the curriculum. I hope I'm not aware about the curriculums and all. So maybe they have the option of, but it depends upon the where and which state these schools are, running. It depends upon the cultural and, again, the language and other things.
Yes, ma'am. Like any other policy, there is also a mentioning of the value inculcation, especially this policy is highlighted the democratic value. Everywhere it is, in every policy, when you search for, you can find out the value-based education, everything is taken together in the policy. And we don't know when it comes to the thing that I don't know exactly.
Because in Rajasthan and in Madhya Pradesh and in Gujarat, the state government is doing according to their own, the environment and the culture and the social, economic, this thing they are taking as per their own. Running government is doing according to their own. The textbook has been, many things has been come since 2-3 years. Hello.
Hello.
Yeah.
I think that question is answered. Thank you,
Yeah.
ma'am. Okay, we are going for the conclusion part as we are already past our time. So,
Right.
Sameer sir, could you do the conclusion and end the discussion?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Women's Manifesto. It was a nice session for us, and rightly we have discussed many of the aspects of the National Policy of Education and National Education Policy 2020, and with regard to the special angle, women education. And we had discussions from various angles. That is, the first speaker, Madam, has rightly explained the background of the situation, the women as such in the socio-cultural perspective in which women have, I mean, especially the Indian women, we have. And Dr. Scindia has given an overall picture of the significance of highlighting the
webinar നടക്കുന്നു.
Yes, highlighting the women education, and she has given a picture of the earlier policies and documents of significance in India, and it was also impressive. Later, my point was collectively looking into some of the specific provisions. I mentioned some of the based on the segments of the segments or the specific aspects mentioned in the policy. I have highlighted. Later, Reem Madam, she has wonderfully given the other side of the coin, that is especially including the reservation concern of thing and the marginalized in terms of scheduled. Especially she has highlighted the significance of policies on education of the women, including scheduled caste, scheduled tribe, and all the other marginalized group and issues that they face nationally. Now we had a few questions, and all the questions were very good standards in the sense that they were highly involved in the discussion as a whole. That was depicted in their questions as well, and I hope that we can wind it up now. It was a nice explanation of all the aspects, and we can take it forward the discussions, and whenever we have time and we have an opportunity, we can discuss it later to come up with rigorous policies and programs on women education. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir. Now we move on to the vote of thanks section. Now I invite Sharna Smuthu to do Dr. Sharna Smuthu for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Devi. A very good afternoon to respected guests and colleagues and participants. I think being an organization working for women empowerment, we found that it should be discussed about a national education policy and education of women, as it's going to be make changes in the education system of our country. I think today's discussion, in this respect, today's discussion, we discussed mainly all the points related to women education, their primary level dropouts, higher education level issues, international level issues, and policy level changes, and everything we discussed. And Dr. Samir concluded this speech of every speakers. The main point discussed by all speakers, I think it's the need of cultural level changes or social level transformation. And the second thing is the implementation of the policy limited. We have to gender-based implementation of the policy is also emphasized by the speakers. My responsibility is to deliver the vote of thanks. On behalf of Women's Manifesto, first of all, I express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Shabistan Ghaffar, former chairperson of Committee on Education, Girls Education, National Commission for Minority Educational Institutions. Thank you very much, ma'am, for sharing her views on changes on the reason for denial of education to the girls, and the disparity on gender education, and the need of changes we have to make within the society. Thank you very much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and being part of the discussion. I may like to express my sincere gratitude to Dr. Sindhya, Assistant Professor, Department of Education, Kerala University. Thank you very much, ma'am. She through her presentation, she discussed many points, including the empowerment of women through education and different commissions, their recommendations, international level status of women education, and solution to improve the education status of women. Thank you very much, ma'am, for accepting our invitation and for sharing your thoughts. Some of the participants are asking to share your PPT with if you allow this, we can share the PPT. It would be more valuable for all. Next, I wish to express my gratitude to Dr. Reem Shamsuddin, Assistant Professor, Maharajas College, Ernakulam, for her thought-provoking talk on the higher education and women, especially the marginalized session within the women community. Definitely, it was a good talk. Thank you very much, Reem. We also acknowledge our gratitude to Dr. Samir Babu, Assistant Professor, Department of Education, Kerala University, for his valuable thoughts, especially then he emphasized on the need of critical awareness among the community, and the need of infrastructure facility, stringent measures to be implemented in the implementation level. Thank you very much, Samir. We all also acknowledge our gratitude for his guidance and suggestions to conduct this program. Thank you, Samir. I express my sincere gratitude to all the participants, especially those who be part of the discussion part. Thank you very much to all. all the members and the president of Women's Manifesto, Ms. Soliha, is also here. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you to all the participants and resource persons once more. Thank you very much. I think this program is not the conclusion. Yeah, we are not concluding this topic here. Actually, we as the resource person said, we have to work more. We have to make changes within the society. We have to work more and more. Thank you very much to all. Thank you.
Ma'am. So we have reached the end of the webinar. Thank you everyone for this sharing this experience. Okay. A good day to everyone.